Okay, so what we discussed the last week was on the topic that when we have a change, we move to a new place, be it the work that is taking us to a new place, or school, dorm, apartment that we share with others. How do we adapt to the new environment, the challenges that we have, etc., right? And the points that I basically discussed then were first about me versus myself, right? And then we were the main topics that we talked about was one, to maintain connections. When you say maintain connections, whatever support system we have, never hesitate to reach out to that, and never hesitate to build new connections, never be close to that idea. And it would always be good to have a mentor. We discussed that. And then we discussed about how we should definitely utilize some time every day to spend with myself, rather than me, the superficial me, the myself, my true self. And we were discussing about how mindfulness activities, practices help with that, and definitely explore enjoyable activities that we could get into. And every new place has something exciting and peculiar about that particular place. Never hesitate in exploring the new world that we are in. And we also discussed, the third point we discussed was about be ready to embrace the change. Things, even if we are not moving to a new place, even if we are in the same place, changes are bound to happen. Always have an open mind to changes. And when changes happen, changes can always, or any change will always have a positive aspect to it, a negative aspect to it. Try to focus more on the positive aspect. That will help us, that will help others, that will help with the situation overall. And we also discussed about setting realistic expectations, because changes are not always going to be the way we want it all the time, right? And four, the important point that we discussed was to set boundaries. When you say set boundaries, we should try to make choices that align with the values that we have been inculcated with, that we have been taught. And when you say set boundaries, it's not about rejecting anyone or anything. It's about just defining what are my do's and don'ts, what are my rights and wrongs. So this is what we discussed the last time, right? And then we had breakout rooms. All of you discussed various points, and each of the group members then made note of the points and questions, queries, comments that you guys had, right? So that's what we're going to go over this week. So do you want to share that screen now? So group one, I see there's one point kind of summarized. It says it feels hard to set boundaries because you feel you're not letting people, you feel you are letting people down. How can we balance these two? Like I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, when you say setting boundaries, it's not about rejecting anyone or considering someone inferior or considering someone outcast or a sinner or anything like that. We don't need to go to those extremes. Like, I guess, did I discuss this the last time? When I was quite little, and one of Amma's birthdays, the weeks preceding Amma's birthday in the 90s, and Amma, back then we didn't have this big hall where Amma's daily bhajans happen, right? And Amma, after bhajans, wanted to clear the place of, so it used to be an open space then, and then they would build a huge tent there where the birthday program would happen. So the weeks preceding Amma's birthday program, there'll be a lot of construction happening. And one of these days after bhajans, Amma went out there to take a walk, to take a look at the construction happening of the makeshift big tent, like a semi-auditorium kind of thing. And Amma looked at all the nails and sharp-edged stones, etc. there. She said during birthday, most of the people tend not to wear their shoes. They'll be barefooted, so this will hurt them. So Amma got a small bag, like one of the construction cement bags, empty one, and she started picking all the stones and nails and metal items. She started putting it in the bag, and she said, for whatever reason that day, as a matter of fact, she had paid attention to it the previous day, and she had asked people, if possible, can all of you just get together, clear all these sharp items from the place. And people conveniently forgot about it. Once Amma went back to her room after bhajans, they also went back to her room. So that day she said she's going to do it herself, and she's not going to let anyone else do it. And she let a few children, a few of us who were around, she let us join her. So we were around her, we were all picking things, putting it in the bag, and Amma as usual was, striking conversation with us. Initially it was a lot of jokes and fun, then it became serious. So on that serious note, one of the questions I asked Amma was, Amma, you say you should avoid bad company, but at the same time you say you should see only goodness in others. If you see only goodness in others, then how do you even recognize bad company? And how do you avoid them then? Amma said, you should definitely avoid bad company, but when you say avoid bad company, it's not about looking at the bad thing or the negative thing in that person. Rather, look at the negative thing at the actions that they perform. Every person, however bad they may seem, will have something or some inspiring quality or the other. So you can always love the person, respect the person for the goodness that they have. But when they get involved in something wrong, when they get involved in something that you feel is not right, avoid the company then. That's all what it means when you say avoid bad company. Doesn't mean avoid the person, reject the person, brand the person as something bad or sinner or not a good guy, etc. You don't have to brand them that way at all. So this point that you make, it feels hard to set boundaries. When you say set boundaries, I feel it's not about making such hard definitions. Boundaries is just about my boundary. It's like when I own a piece of land, I have a house and I own a piece of land. We do set a boundary to your house, right? It just defines this is my space. That's all. It doesn't mean that you, my neighbor, is never welcome into this space, or you should not look into the direction of my house. I don't want to build huge walls that completely cuts myself off from the rest of the neighborhood. That's not what we mean by boundaries. Boundaries are only setting certain principles, making it clear to yourself. And when you set principles, we should always be clear that principles also should be flexible. Else that principle will become the biggest hurdle for us. Having a principled life is always good, but to be too obsessed with that principle can be counterproductive for us. So to have a boundary is good, but I want to build a fort kind of wall around my house, then it defeats the purpose of having a beautiful house or having a beautiful sight from my house. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to set very strong boundaries. When you say boundaries, it's just to remind ourselves what are my do's and don'ts. That's all. So when we do it that way, we are never letting others down. The neighbors always should feel that you are welcome to my house, to my home, to my backyard, whenever you can. Though I'm building this fence, do it in such a way. And the example that I discussed the last week, right? My classmates, they were into drinking, they were into certain habits which I did not think was my cup of tea. But I made it a point to not give them the feeling that I hate you because of this. I will not definitely participate in that. That is what I made it clear. So I drew the boundary just to make that clear. But it should never give them the feeling that I am judging you because of that. I feel I am somewhere there, you are somewhere there. Never do that. Always blend with them. That's the best way. Blend rather than fit in. Just blend with them is what we need. So in that case, I don't think you are going to let people down. Initially, they may feel confused, they may feel a little awkward, but as long as they see that you love them, you accept them the way they are, you respect them the way they are, it is going to be fine after some time. Just that we need that patience, not a lot of patience. It just doesn't take that long a time. They'll be fine. Anyone from group 1 from the last week that you would want to add to this or say something, if at all?
I think that absolutely covers it, Ramanji. I was in group 1. No, yeah.
Okay. So group 2, what if we are not able to adjust? Big challenge is trying to join friend groups that are already predefined. So hostility from outside amidst your attempt at changing, battling with in regarding natural introversion. Is being introverted natural or environmental based? Knowing when to compromise, when to draw boundaries, how to have the humility to know you are wrong so you can change. How do you know what is in your hands, what isn't in your hands? How to give feedback in a competitive manner without aggression in a leadership setting. What if we are not able to adjust is the main topic, right, or main point here. What if we are not able to adjust? I feel we definitely don't want to start a war with ourselves. If we are not able to adjust, just don't push yourself. Don't. The whole point of adjusting is just to accept the environment the way it is. That is all what adjusting means. Sometimes it doesn't even take. It's not even about me changing. It's just to accept the way it is. I go from MA Center DC. We do a program. So I did a program in DC Ashram on Saturday, the past Saturday, and then Sunday I did a program in MA Center Atlanta. The things that happen in DC are very different from the things that happen in Atlanta. The sound system is different. The set of people organizing are different. The singers are different. Musicians are different. The whole environment is different. I definitely have to adjust, right? I feel the very first step that in terms of adjustment is just accept the way Atlanta is, the way DC is. I cannot expect DC to behave like Atlanta group. I cannot expect the Atlanta group to behave like DC. Now Swamiji's programs are happening, right? Big Swamiji, Swami Amrita Swarupananda's programs, he's gone to India for a week. So I've been talking to all these various satsangs, all the cities that he's going to with the organizers. Every organizer has their own set of questions, their own set of challenges, their own set of restrictions that they have physically in the venue, etc. And I cannot tell the Michigan people, how come San Ramon people didn't ask me this question? How dare you ask that question to me? Or I cannot tell DC people, Atlanta doesn't seem to have a problem with this issue. Why are you making a big issue about this? Why do you want a big meeting about this? They are the way they are. So adjustment, I'm not changing anything. My points are exactly the same. The requirements for Swamiji programs are exactly the same. Everything is exactly the same as far as I am concerned. And I'm using the same language, the same accent, the same everything as I speak to them. Just that the only adjustment that I'm making is I'm accepting them the way they are. The restrictions their physical venue has, the restriction their group has, Just accept that. That is what adjustment is. Just accept the people, the place, the environment that you are in, the way it is. That is what adjustment is. Then how I behave is completely under my control. After that, that is completely a different. That's a secondary thing that we can do. It's very contextual. There is no silver bullet point to say that this is how you should do it. It's not possible. Based on the way you understand the environment is, then you act accordingly. But the very primary step is accept the way it is. Dorm is not going to be like your home. However well they promote the dining hall in your dorm, they say they have awesome food or whatever, it is not going to be as good as your mom cooks for you. So accept it the way it is. Then it's very, very easy to adjust after that. You expect the pasta that they make being as good as your mom or your friend or your aunt makes, it is going to be a problem. So acceptance is basically what, accept the reality, accept the fact, accept their nature, understand that, acknowledge that is what is most important, I feel. So in that case, a big challenge is trying to join the friends group that is already predefined. Again, it's the same thing, right? It's predefined. Accept it the way it is. See whether it works with you. Definitely don't reject it because it is the way it is. I don't want to deal with them. Give it a try. I had that in my mind too. When I went for that internship with my classmates, I knew they are quite different from me. The way they do things, they talk, they discuss the topics of interests, etc. are all very different. I had it in my mind that I'll try to be there, be with them, enjoy with them to the extent all that I can accept. If it doesn't fit in, then I'm just going to go and move into the ashram and travel every day 1.5 hours. Madras, Chennai ashram. That's what my thought was. So you don't see that it's the predefinition that the group has doesn't fit you at all or doesn't match your wavelength. Why then have a tussle there? Just move out of that place. So there is no compulsion that you have to fit into that. So fitting in, it should never be fitting in, like I mentioned, right? It should be just blend. So sometimes blending in doesn't mean that you have to be right in that group. You can always be part of that group whenever you are comfortable with it. Make them feel good. And that would be the other point. Make them feel good rather than me, whether I am feeling good. Definitely we should feel good, but I feel when we make them feel good, we automatically we will feel good. I feel that happens. Battling with in regarding natural introversion. Is being introverted natural or environmental based? I think a lot of us, we have our own nature, right? I feel when I look at me from a third person point of view, I'm quite introverted. I would prefer not talking a lot to people. Right after a satsang, my first what's the term that we use? My first
Inclination?
what is it?
Inclination?
Inclination, or the first thought that I get is move out of this crowd, go and sit somewhere in the room or somewhere in solitude. That's always my thing. Right after Arati is done, the Shanti mantras are chanted, my first instinct that I get is go somewhere and sit somewhere. Sometimes I do that. I just go and sit in a room for 5 minutes and then come out. So, and given a choice, I would always prefer sitting inside the room rather than going out with someone. That would always be my natural inclination. And I thought though many people complained about it in Amritapuri and all throughout the world, during COVID times when we had to do quarantine, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Amritapuri, I was probably one of the first people to quarantine in Amritapuri ashram. There were few on the other side, in the university side, but I was probably one of the first persons to be asked to be in the room for 21 days. That's how long the quarantine period was. I thought I was there for 16 days, and then Amma said, it's fine, now you can come out. I thoroughly enjoyed those 16 days. I I wouldn't mind doing that again, having a quarantine period. So we may have that natural being introvert kind of tendency. There's nothing wrong in that, but with that tendency I guess I talk a lot. Even in this very Zoom call, few of you have hardly spoken a few sentences. I have spoken the most in this call, right? So I feel being introvert is completely fine, but whenever it is required to speak to someone, share things with them, so be it. Let us not be obsessed with that too. Like I said, same thing with principles, right? I have certain principles in my life, but being obsessed with that principle is only going to be a problem for me than being a helping factor for me. So, being an introvert, is it natural or environmental based? I feel environment based. I feel for some of us it's natural. Some of us, in certain situations, it's better to keep our mouth shut. We better keep our mouth shut, right? Sometimes silence speaks more than words. Sometimes silence helps. So I once remember visiting someone who had lost their close family member. I was telling Amma about it, and that was probably one of my first experiences to console someone who has lost someone very dear to them. And I was just telling Amma, I was just thinking, what should I tell them? Sometimes, and Amma said, you don't have to tell them anything. Just go and sit with them. If they want to talk, let them talk. Just keep quiet and be with them. That itself is a big help sometimes. So sometimes being an introvert, being silent, being completely closed is fine. So it could be environment based too. Knowing when to compromise, when to draw boundaries. I feel we already touched upon this topic. We should draw boundaries, but let it be low fence. Don't build a fortress around your house. So if you do that, you should always be flexible. Like I told you, have principles, have the boundaries, but be flexible. Let those be flexible. Not compromising, but flexible. Compromising in the sense, we should never let go of the principles, but at the same time be flexible. If you remember, we discussed the example of Hanuman. Lord Hanuman had to cross across the Indian Ocean, and the belief is that he was so good at it that he had a huge leap from one of the southern tips of India to Sri Lanka, the northern part of Sri Lanka. And as he took that huge leap, he was flying. He had a few hurdles on the way. There were a couple of demonesses. Demon is the plural of demon. Demoness is demonesses. Demoness.
Demons.
Demons. Demoness.
Demoness is feminine.
Yeah.
Demons.
So what is the plural of that?
Oh.
Demonesses. Anyway, he had a couple of challenges, and he always knew that he had no time to waste. He had to go and deal with or find Mother Sita in Lanka. He always had that in his mind, but at the same time he was not so obsessed with that he couldn't deal with these little hurdles that he had to deal with. Had he been too obsessed with the goal alone and not dealt with them, he would have never reached the destination. So there was this, he set the right example of right balance between having principle, having the objective, having the goal, but at the same time be flexible given the situation that we are in. So I guess I'll stop at that with that point. Once we're done with all these, group 2 members can speak. How to have the humility to know you are wrong so you can change. I feel when we are wrong, definitely our good friends will point that out. When we are wrong, sometimes we don't even need good friends. The best friend, our conscience, will always tell us, some way or the other. And the problem is when we kind of try to ignore that conscience call. The conscience usually tells us, you could have done a little better in that situation. I feel we just need to listen to that. That's the humility we need. And so I feel we don't need to think too much about it. Just be open to feedback that we get from our well-wishers and our conscience. That's all I think we should be open to. How do you know what is in your hands and what isn't in your hands? Whatever we are able to do is in our hands. Whatever we are not able to do is not in our hands. I feel it's like when we are driving the car. We see there's a stop sign coming in front of us. We apply the brake. The car is tend to stop. Our car has to stop the way it is designed. And we apply the brake. It doesn't stop. We know it is now beyond our control, right? Then we try to look for other. I think life is like that. We do things according to how we are taught, how we learn through experience, and sometimes we do get a response immediately, which is palpable. Sometimes we see that it is not working the way we are used to. Then we can recognize that it is beyond our control. I feel rather more than recognizing whether it is under my control or not is, are we ready to accept it is the question. So we should always drive the car, however good the car is, drive it in such a way with the understanding that the brakes can fail any time. Then the way we accelerate, the way we drive will always be safer, right? When we go with the feeling that brakes will work at any cost, any time, anywhere, there's a good chance we will drive recklessly, and when we need the brake and the brake fails, it's a problem, right? So I feel it's not about recognizing it's not about recognizing. We definitely recognizing what is beyond our control is very important, but what is most important is, are we prepared for it? Are we acknowledging it? Are we able to accept it is most important. So always be prepared that whenever I do something, these are all possible outcomes of what I'm trying to do, and I'm prepared for all those outcomes. That is how we should be prepared for it. Amma gives a very simple example, right? You have a good friend, you need $10,000. We discussed that in several months ago now. You need $10,000. You go to your friend seeking $10,000, but you go to your friend only with the expectation that you're going to get $10,000 from your friend. There's a good chance, or there's 4 out of 5 chances that you will feel you'll come back dejected. Why? Because Amma says it is very natural that there can be several outcomes, right? One outcome is this friend gives you $10,000. Or first outcome is that the friend gives you $100,000 instead of $10,000. The second outcome is the friend gives you $10,000. Third outcome is the friend says, I cannot give you $10,000, but I can give you $5,000. The fourth outcome is the friend says, I have no money, I cannot give you anything. The fifth outcome is the friend says, I was going to ask you for $10,000. Can you give me $10,000? So all these 5 outcomes. So if we go prepared only for one outcome wherein he gives you $10,000, 4 out of 5 chances that you'll come back dejected, right? So be prepared for all the 5 outcomes and then go and ask for the $10,000. So I feel more than being concerned about how do I recognize what is in my hands, what is not in my hands, we should just be prepared for whatever be the outcome. Certain will be under my control, certain things will not be under my control. Just be prepared for them. How to give feedback in a competitive manner without aggression in a leadership setting. I feel in any setting, I always feel as long as people know that we respect them for the way they are, and then say, this is what I do, these are my principles, there'll be no difficulty for them to accept it. The problem of accepting from their side comes only when they start feeling that we are not respecting them for what they are or what they are doing. So I think that's all what we need to keep in our mind. Respect them, love them, accept them the way they are, and then put forth your principles. I feel, and again, there is no one single solution for this. It is all contextual. So if you tell me a certain situation, I can probably give certain suggestions for that particular situation. But overall, I would say the idea is they should feel that you respect them, accept them the way they are. Then they won't have any problems. Okay, so that's with group 2. Do you want to take a break after this group 2 and do the talent showcase? Sure. Is that like the last point, how to give them feedback in a competitive manner without aggression? Are you asking me to just, I think we have had enough of your talking.
I no. I'm showing you respect. I respect who you are, what you're saying. No, I meant that as a private message. I didn't want to interrupt your flow. Sorry,
Oh,
Ramanji.
sorry. Okay, that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We can have the talent show in between. That's fine. Before
But
that, anyone from group 2 who would want to, anything that you want to add? Okay, no one seems to have anything to say. So, what do you suggest, Arun? We go to group 3 or?
it's up to you. I thought maybe we can take a break now, do the talent showcase, and invite Divya onto the stage, and then after that we can go with group three, and then as much time as you have before we move on to
Oh, wow, we have
conclude.
group 6. Oh, group 6
Yeah,
already
there's a
had
there's
their
a
own.
lot.
Let's see what groups will struggle to communicate, keep connections up, keep priorities straight, setting boundaries, not to cross, staying focused with different challenges, being present in what we are doing, being positive. I think group 3 is not really questions, right? They are just, it's just their points. Group 3 is basically saying, the first one is a struggle to communicate and keep connections up. It can be a lot to reach out to others. Keep priorities straight, setting boundaries for others not to cross. I think those are the top points we already discussed. Setting boundaries for others not to cross. It's like having a fence telling this is my area, but at the same time be flexible. Staying focused with different challenges. Prioritizing what needs to be done in that given situation. Being present in what we are doing. Being positive in our actions. Avoid stagnation in our. So all these are good points. I think these are points made, right? I feel the first one probably is a question. Struggle to communicate and keep connections up. It can be a lot to reach out to others. I think let's just discuss that and then move on to the talent show. So, struggle to communicate with others. Again, I feel we are giving it too much importance about communicate. I feel these are the things that should just naturally happen. I feel you're not wanting to communicate with people, just don't communicate. That's fine. It doesn't need to be such that you have to always communicate with people. I mean, I myself am a good example. I'm not good with communication. I hardly speak with people. Even my biological father, my sisters, or I'm not at all in touch with my friends from my college times, school times. So I'm very bad at that. Even with satsang members, I'm not someone who just call them to ask, hey, how are you doing? Did you watch this movie, or how was your dinner? I'm not of that kind. I usually talk to people when there's something to discuss. So I feel, and I really don't push myself doing that. So I feel it needn't be something that we're really trying to go out of way doing. But we do need to keep connection more like when we are in a distress situation, when we are in a situation wherein we need help. It should not be then that you're going through your contacts and looking for phone number and then trying to make a phone call, right? As a analogy, you should definitely have that connection with people, at least a few. Like I said, one mentor or couple of mentors, one or two family members who you can always reach out to without any hesitation. Definitely keep that up. That's all what we need. Doesn't mean that we need to have a huge network of connections. That's not what we're looking at. So if we are struggling to communicate less. That's fine. Otherwise, we are adding one more struggle to our life, right? The whole point here is to reduce the struggles that we have in life. So don't be too particular about or pushy about, I need to have a lot of points of communication. If we are struggling, just avoid communicating. At least speak to your mentor and ask them, how do I approach this? Probably that would be the best way to do it. So have those minimum few connections that we definitely can maintain. Okay, so others are all point. Keep priorities straight, setting boundaries, staying focused, being present in what we're doing, being positive, avoid stagnation, etc. Okay,